Recording in progress.
All right, testing. Are we live? Today is Tuesday, September 5th. We'd like to welcome you to our regular school board meeting. The time is 6:03. All board members are present in the boardroom. Thank you. Along with our superintendent, Dr. Bryant, our student representative, Joshua Pack, and our executive assistant, Amanda Foster. So with that, Joshua, will you please lead us into the pledge and then the land acknowledgement?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We acknowledge that we gather here today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina people of the Upper Cook Inlet. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina people have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. ASD is committed to diversity and inclusion, and it is with honor and respect that we recognize all Indigenous people who live and learn in our community.
Thank you very much, Joshua. So we'd like to welcome you again to our school board meeting. And thank you for not just attending, but supporting the work of the Anchorage School Board. We offer thanks to our parents, our teachers, our staff, our school business partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district with your time, your talents, and of course, your tax dollars. That brings us to item 3, approval of the agenda.
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda as written.
Moved and second to approve the agenda as written, as presented. Is there any opposition to approving the agenda as presented? Seeing, hearing, no opposition. The agenda is approved as presented. Thank you. And that brings us to our reports, item B. We'll start with Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Margot. My first thing to comment today is a timely one. It is surrounding the whole situation with the Matsu Borough School District around their student representative position. To briefly sum it up, the MSBSD is attempting to reduce their student representative's position, like mine, in their school board to only a short report instead of their position or the active position where they get to engage and represent his fellow peers on matters that concern their students, basically completely disregarding the only youth voice on the board. And I am very grateful for our school board who stands against the decision and finds this shocking like I have. And in light of this, I have contacted the student rep on the Matsu School Borough District, and we are planning to write a resolution where we get to present and condemn the actions of that school board to our SABs and then to OSOG, bringing it the attention it deserves. And outside of that, our first SAB meeting will be next week from 8:15 to 10:15 a.m. And our first e-board meeting in preparation for this SAB meeting happened last week, where we planned the agenda and organized for the coming school year, our SAB. The first meeting will be introductory and give a chance for students to understand the purpose, the parliamentary procedures, and overview of our school board, and also their student advisory board. And I'm more than excited for this first meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pack. Any questions for Mr. Pack? Yes, member, I see two hands. Member Holloman, and then Lessons.
Thank you. I thought about addressing this in the comments at the end of the meeting, but it's relevant to what you reported on. One of the comments from a board member in Matsu was that having a student representative seated with the board was I can't remember if he said gift or accommodation to the advisory board. And I want to say my view of it is very different in that it's not a gift or an accommodation to anybody. It's about a board having voices that it can hear. In particular, there are not a lot of venues for students to speak to the board other than the 3-minute testimony. And yet they are our primary concern and the single largest group of people that we impact, and ostensibly the whole reason we're here every so often. And having a place where you have the ability to ask questions as things are presented to us, as you have the ability to ask questions of us and do other things, makes this a better board. And it brings voices into the room that we're very distanced from for a variety of reasons, age being a huge one, but also in terms of just who we intermingle with and everything else. I've watched how the board handled what they did in Matsu and am very disappointed. I think it was a terrible way to treat anyone, but in particular someone that had previously sat with them. And yeah, I think the disposition of, I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm happy to fight any other member on the board that feels differently about this. But I feel like you're here to bring things to the table that we would not see otherwise. We'd be remiss to restrict that or walk that back in any fashion. I don't think there's any will of anyone I know of on this board that wants to follow that as an example at all. In talking with the AASB, there are at least 30 some districts in the state that have student representation at their board meetings. They can't remember anyone that ever walked backward from it once they actually put it in place. And it's becoming more common on assemblies. It's becoming more common with a lot of governing boards that they want to actually have a direct voice from their clientele, and that is our students. So it's a critically important role, and thank you for doing it. And it's a lonely spot for a student to come sit in this meeting because we don't bump into each other a lot outside of all this and everything. I wouldn't call it recreational. I don't think I'd call it fun. Sometimes it's interesting, and it's probably the nicest thing you can say about it. But it is important, and we do appreciate your being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Holloman. Member Lessons.
Well, I sincerely appreciate your comments. We don't need to resort to a brawl.
That's okay.
No fighting, no
No
fighting.
fighting. And Josh, I continue to respect your work, your intellect, your thoughtfulness, your empathy, and you are an excellent choice to convey the sentiments of your peers. So I continue to value that. I did have a request if you could please share the SAB agenda, at least with, I think Member Wilson and I are your board liaisons, but perhaps the whole board as a whole might like that. So maybe you can just send that to Amanda each month. That would just be maybe a great point of information for all of us moving forward. That's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I will say that I agree, and I won't repeat Member Holloman's remarks. I think the only thing I would disagree with is by indicating that Mr. Pack seems like he's having tons of fun down here, so I'm not sure what you're looking at. But with that said, I did just a clarification question for our student representative. Will the SAB be voting on the resolution that you'll be working with the Matsu student rep on?
Yes, so we have to vote and go through regular parliamentary procedure for basically all our resolutions, similar to the school board, and we follow all the like Parley Pro and the Robert's Rules of Orders. So yes, we will be.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Joshua, just so I hope you have on your calendar that we have a joint assembly meeting on Friday, the 15th. You are also invited and welcome to attend those. We know school comes first, and we will be very understanding because that's from 10 to 12. But if you could, we meet quarterly, so we'll make sure that's on your calendar as well. All right. Thank you very much. Yes.
I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but perhaps if there's a way to use technology so our student representative could zoom in to share if there's a student report. I mean, then he could stay at school for the majority of that time, but then show up at an appointed time. It's just sort of
Absolutely. I think we stream those, so we could make sure he gets that. That's a great idea. You can let us know what you want. Yeah, that's a great idea. Alrighty. Not seeing any more questions. Thank you for that report. And we look forward to updates on the activities that you have planned. Which includes the panel, the Student Mental Health Wellness Panel that you, Maggie, and hopefully Zoe will be able to attend next week. So we look for that report too. All right. Thank you. All right. So that concludes item B1. We are now on item B2. Dr. Bryant.
Thank you, Madam President. So just a little bit of context for this item. You may be wondering why we haven't been able to discuss our goal monitoring. So Madam President, I thought it would be helpful if we provided more context as to what's going on with the data at the state level and a couple of updates on the status of the ELA curriculum rollout. So I'll hand it off to our team.
Yeah, members of the school board. So our first two progress monitoring reports were supposed to be on our STAR data, our state assessment data. That data isn't probably going to come to us until much later in the school year, possibly after Christmas even. So we aren't able to do those because we don't have the data for those. There's some things going on at the state level that they're looking at those results and working on that. So, but we are doing work still. And the READS Act is a big lift that we've had, and we have the new CKLA adoption, and we thought this would be a good time as we start reorganizing that goal monitoring calendar that we have to give you an update as to what has happened and where we're going with the CKLA adoption and the READS Act. So Diane is here with a few notes on that.
Good evening. Okay, I just wanted to give you just a few updates. First of all, we wanted to thank you for all your support for the new Teacher Academy. That went off really well. On the last 2 days of the new Teacher Academy, we trained all K-3 teachers in the entire district, training up to 650 teachers on the CKLA implementation, the ins and outs of the curriculum, and then how to use it, get started on the beginning pieces of it. That's only the tipping point, just the beginning of the training that we will be doing with our teachers throughout the year. We were required to submit an MTSS plan to the state by September 1st. We were able to submit it prior to September 1st. So our MTSS plan is updated and at the state level at this point. And we can update you when we receive approval on our plan. All our curriculum materials arrived in state and teachers have the materials in hand. We are in the process of adjusting materials because we have some schools that had higher numbers than anticipated and some schools that had lower numbers. In the SPED department with our resource teachers, we were making some adjustments. We had a special training for our resource teachers on the 10th and 11th. It wasn't the type of training that we had hoped for. They were not able to give our teachers guidance on how they should prioritize within the curriculum for our resource teachers. So at our level with Nicole Somerville, we are readjusting our plans and we'll be readjusting how we train our resource teachers on using the curriculum correctly. And just a couple of more things. We are engaged in video streaming right now with the communications department. Lika McCauley from Federal Programs initiated the process, and you will be seeing some great videos coming out through our different sources, talking about the CKLA Reads Act adoption and the importance of attendance in order for this to work really well for us, amongst other things. She's also creating videos on parent engagement. And so that will look really nice. We're very happy about that. And then finally, this month is a really busy month for our department. We're currently engaged in screening all our kinder through third grade students. We have testing. We have 11 testing teams out doing all the testing. We should be able to get done within 2 weeks with the number of folks we have deployed. We are involved in training in M-Class Intervention and Boost. We talked about those two intervention programs that we purchased. We're in the process of training all our teachers, and we're also training them in how to utilize the progress monitoring part in M-Class Amplify. So we have about 1,500 teachers that we're in the process of training. We're prioritizing our kinder through third grade teachers, and this will probably take us up until December to get everybody trained. And then finally, we updated our targeted intervention forms. It's what the state calls our individual reading improvement plan. We've updated the form so that it's easier for our teachers to use. And we will be training our principals so that they can in turn train their staff on how to use these forms. Because once we get the screening done, they'll have to access those forms right away. And then we are also training our staff on how to read the reports from the screeners so that they're able to articulate them to the parents at their first parent conferences. And that's it.
Actually, there was another thing that I did want to mention is it's a big lift for our teachers and for our principals to get all this stuff done. And we have been showing and telling the principals where we should be showing some grace with our teachers, because some of the things that we are doing, we've realized we have to slow down a little bit to make sure it's done right. And but it's a huge lift for every one of those teachers and principals. So we appreciate all that work that they're doing for us.
And thank you both very much. Questions from the board? Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Just a question about the certification our teachers are, I believe, expected to have as part of the READS Act. Is that something that's happening as part of professional development, either before or after the start of the year? Is it something teachers are expected to do outside of working hours? And are they compensated for that? Has that been decided yet, or is that still pending?
So the training they're required to have is training required by the state. They're not expected to be certified until 2025. So we'll be addressing that as time goes. We really want to spend our time focused on the CKLA implementation. However, a lot of teachers have started the training. I took the training. It's the Keys to Literacy training. The state is paying for that training for all teachers right now. So we're taking advantage of that. It is in our own time, unfortunately, and it is about 45 hours of training. They receive 3 credits through UAA when they take the training, and they also receive a certificate that states that they are certified in the science of reading. They can use that certificate to acquire a reading endorsement through the state. Right now, the state is saying that it'll cost us $50 per endorsement, but they are also at the state level discussing whether or not they'll waive those fees. So I know that in collaboration with AEA, we're waiting to see how that will work out. But we have a lot of teachers taking that training, and they are also receiving credit towards their certification for that training.
Follow up?
Yep, follow up. Thank you for the information. More related to our goal monitoring schedule. I don't know if we've already considered this, and I think there was made mention of reorganizing our goal monitoring schedule, but we're into September now without having conducted a goal monitoring session. If we don't get results sooner than later, I would hope we start monitoring maybe some guardrail data that we know can be looked at. I just want to make sure we're not backloading a lot of our work into what will be a very busy period of the school year for administration and staff later on. Thank you.
Sure. Through the president, Member Jacobs, that is something that's on our mind. We were in a similar predicament this time last year, and last year we chose to go the path of presenting interim data, so really fresh data that also lended itself to valuable discussion. So I anticipate in our next board planning meeting, we'll propose a couple of options for the board to finalize. So we'll resume the sessions likely in October.
Great. So can you clarify? So we have not received the Alaska Star data from the state. When was that expected initially? Was it like last spring, this summer, in the summer? Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, so we can't, it's not our fault.
Right.
And I'm not blaming, but it absolutely is not the district's fault that we do not have the Alaska Star data.
And I will
Yes.
say that we do appreciate them doing the work that they're doing because we want to make
Absolutely.
sure that data is very good before we see the results.
Absolutely. And I absolutely agree with Member Jacobs and the superintendent that while we wait, maybe we look at the guardrails and where we are with those during this time where we really can't, or we look at some other kinds of things that are happening.
Our window
Within,
for them
internally.
started today, so
Yeah,
here in a few weeks we'll be starting
We'll have-
to get those
okay.
results.
cool. So can you just clarify who is doing the testing?
The testing is done by a testing team.
Testing team.
And
this is every K through third grader.
yes,
One-on-one.
one-on-one test. It's a one-on-one. It's not by groups. It's not by classes. It's a one-on-one test, and it's done by a team that's been totally trained. 25 subs, 10 reading intervention specialists, 25 Ignite teachers, and 1 to 2 people from each school. In the past, we had instructional coaches, but of course, those went away
Those
through
went
the
away,
budget
yeah.
process,
Mhm.
and so we've had to readjust and make a team.
Okay. Wow. And how many kids is that? 15,000? No, can't be.
No,
Maybe more
I
like.
don't know. I'd say it wrong off the top of my
Okay.
head.
I think it's, I think you're probably close to it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
We have 1,500 teachers, so,
Yeah.
and we're at 43,000 kids, so I
Yeah.
would say.
All right. Other questions? Anything on Alaska Star data? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if you had anything to add, Dr. Wright?
I just wanted to again be very clear with what we shared today for the record that the reason why parents and students and the community don't have access to AK Star data is because of processes at the state level. If it were up to ASD, we'd love to share that and plan around the data, but the state has not given us that data.
Thank you very much. All righty, so we are now at item C, which is goal monitoring, and we've already determined that we won't have a goal monitoring report given to us until October. Probably second meeting in October, we'll see, but we're flexible. And this brings us to our public comment period. During each of our board meetings, we set aside an hour at the beginning and an hour at the end of our meeting to hear from our public. We welcome comments from our public, from the public. They're very important to us. This first section is either telephonically or in person. And we don't have many tonight, but all public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Speaking time may not be shared with others. When your name is called, please come to the podium and or on the *6 online. State your name and direct your comments to the chair. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue. The purpose of this agenda item is for you, the public, to inform us, the school board, about your views. There was a time to sign up online in advance, or you could sign up in person by 6 o'clock in this room. If you have handouts that you'd like to share with the board, please give them to the executive assistant who is seated to my left. Finally, I'd like to call your attention to the blue and white handout that is at the door. It goes over the expected decorum in the boardroom. And generally, we follow Robert's Rules of Order. So those rules are at the door. You can have a copy for your record if you, for your review if you would like one. So with those, with that information in place, we'd like to call our first speaker, which is telephonic, Louis Valesco. Louis Valesco. He's not there? Okay. We're not seeing him online. I'll try to come back to him. Next, in person, we have, I think it's Jacqueline Elton. Good evening and welcome. There's a little button on the mic. Looks like a mouthpiece. Just push that and your mic, there it is.
Like that?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jackie. I will be reading from this page because I'm deeply angered by the handling of special education in this district.
Can you pull your mic a little closer so we can hear you? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. My daughter's name is Archer. She's 7 and she's in 2nd grade. When Archer was born, she was 4 months early and had many obstacles. We have fought for every day we have been blessed with her. I myself grew up in Anchorage and attended schools in AST. In high school, I was a TA for a life skills class, which is the curriculum still used today. That was 15 years ago. The advancements made in special education have been many in those years. However, AST seems to be living in the past. When we decided to move back to Anchorage from Texas, I was thrilled. I would be back in a familiar territory as far as my children's education went. However, upon arriving and enrolling Archer in school, I have been met with many issues involving her education and care. The issues I have come to discuss at this meeting is segregation of elementary students based on their disabilities. After enrolling, which did not notify the school of my child's disability, I was asked to switch Archer to a different school as her school only offers SLC, not life skills, meaning she could not attend school with her siblings, peers, or peers in her direct neighborhood. To say this is an abuse of her rights as a person with disabilities and as an American citizen is an understatement. The Anchorage School District has bended the rules of FAPE to fit their agenda. Children are to be met with support of their disabilities in their school, not whatever school is equipped previously to accommodate their needs. The goal of an IEP is to aspire to get students to a level in which they can attend general education, and fostering segregation amongst disabilities does not support this effort. Schools in this district are massively understaffed because teachers, paras, and aides are not being paid living wages. This results in burnout. You cannot first ask that they overextend themselves, then not properly pay them. You have to pick a struggle. In my opinion, this lack of staffing is also a part in what holds ASD back from advances in special education.
You have 30 seconds. Keep going.
I can tell by the way your professionals talk to parents in IEP meetings that they are accustomed to getting their way due to parents not asking why. When met with small forms of resistance, they became physically uncomfortable. They are accustomed to having to look other places to find proper supports for students. This is unacceptable. And it starts at the top. As a parent of a child who fought so hard to live, I have the unique skill set, which is having the endurance and the voice to advocate.
Yes, that is your time for now. If you'd like to send us the rest of your comments, you can email them to us. Thank you very much.
Madam President,
Member Donnelly?
just a point of personal privilege. Years of construction, some tones are difficult for me to hear.
Oh.
And it would really be helpful. I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but if
Turn the mic.
they talk straight into the microphone,
To the mic,
I think I
yes.
could get the tones that I could fully hear.
Okay, we'll remember
Thank you very, very
to
much.
remind speakers to speak directly into the mic. Thank you, Member Donnelly. That concludes, no, it does not. I have one statement to be read into the record. This is from the Anchorage Education Association. The date is September 4th, 2023. AEA ASD negotiations. Dear President Bellamy and school board members, on behalf of the 3,000 members of the Anchorage Education Association, the AEA bargaining team is prepared to begin negotiations for a successor contract. The association looks forward to productive negotiations based on school district proposals that will lead to an agreement that focuses on retaining educators essential to achieving school board goals and increasing student outcomes. Sincerely, Corey Angst, President, Anchorage Education Association. And while he is in the room, he did ask that the statement be read into the record. Thank you. Did Mr. Velasquez show up online? Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes our public comment for the first hour. We are now on item E, consent agenda. Would any board member like to pull any item from the consent agenda? Member Donnelly?
Yes, I'd like to pull item 4, ASD Memorandum 019.
Okay. Anyone else? Right. That item 4, Memorandum 19, will go under action. Let me just look here a minute. I guess I'm not seeing the. Give me 1 minute, please. Yeah, number 4 is ELA. It's going to come under. Oh, there it is. I wasn't looking close enough. Thank you. So action item, we will move item 4, memorandum number 019 under action. It will be item 2 under G. I'm sorry, F. Item 1 under F. I'll get it right.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Move to approve the consent agenda with that one edit. All in favor, please vote. You want to do a voice vote? Does everybody have access to their computer? You can. We'll do a voice vote because there is a little bit of tech issues tonight.
Member Holloman,
Yes.
Member Donnelly,
Yes.
Member Higgins,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Member Lessons,
Yes.
Member Wilson,
Yes.
Student Representative Pack,
Yes.
and President Bellamy.
Yes. Thank you. And that passes. The consent agenda with that one edit passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now we are going to move to item F. Member Donnelly, do you want to speak to your amendment to why you pulled 019?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm concerned because of my experience with the last reading curriculum that we adopted. I think clearly the primary emphasis of the reading curriculum should be its emphasis of phonics, which this may or may not turn out to be. I know that phonics are a component of it, but I'm concerned that it's not articulated in the memorandum as the primary, most important component. Secondly, in 2012, the Anchorage School Board passed a resolution requiring all curriculum to be in compliance with National Common Core standards. But Alaska law requires us to use Alaska state standards. And although the two standards may be compatible, I believe the primary goal should be the adoption of curriculum consistent with the Alaska standards and not National Common Core. In fact, there's even some statutory law that brings funding into consideration if our primary emphasis, which is now the rule in this district, is compliance with National Common Core. I also believe from past experience that the success of any new reading curriculum will be greatly influenced by the effectiveness of its implementation. 3 years into the last curriculum, the board did a survey and discovered that over 40% of the classrooms had not even opened the new curriculum that the board had approved. I would like greater emphasis in this resolution, identifying how we're going to prevent that from happening again with this new curriculum. I think what there was with the last one that was positive got lost because of the lack of implementation effectively. And finally, I'm continue to be disappointed that this district has not done anything aggressively to expand the utilization of Spalding reading, because we know that our alternative schools that are allowed to utilize Spalding reading are very, very successful. And for years, I've been advocating that we even incrementally expand the use of Spalding reading, even if it's just one additional school a year. We ought to be working towards the greater utilization of this very, very successful reading curriculum. And I understand there's difficulty in teaching teachers to teach it. It's important that the parents buy into that, but I still think that we have failed in using the opportunity of this phenomenal reading curriculum that is being very, very successful in a limited number of schools in our district to try to work aggressively to expand its utilization, because we know that kids can read well if they're taught effectively with Spalding reading. Thank you.
Is there any other comments? Member Jacobs?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to clarify my understanding.
Before I'm sorry. Member Donnelly, did you have a change to the memo? Or did you what is your wish what do you want to happen since you pulled it?
I'd like to hear more than the memo has in it about implementation. There's one line in the memorandum that speaks to intent for implementation, working with our instructors, but that didn't work last time. And I'd like to hear what's going to be different this time with implementation.
Thank you, sir. Member Jacobs.
Yeah, and I imagine Dr. Bryan's going to address at least some of the points. I guess to add to the conversation, I want to fact check my own understanding that CKLA and the implementation that we're voting on tonight, as well as the previous K3 vote, occurred in part because the legislature passed the READS Act, which was signed by Governor Dunleavy and required the curriculum from the Department of Education's choosing be adopted. And CKLA was one of the choices. And to the best of my knowledge, there actually wasn't a Spalding choice on the approved reading list for the district to choose from. And so I guess I would like to fact check all of that because I think we've discussed some of this before. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jacobs. Dr. Bryant.
Through the president to Member Jacobs and Member Donnelly, I think these are points that we should definitely address to inform our votes tonight. A couple of key facts. So the district chose to participate in a grant program where the state would subsidize, or for some districts fully fund, the adoption of a new curriculum. So in the conversations we had last year, we discussed that it was our intent from the beginning to adopt a curriculum for K-5. So tonight we're looking at a 4-5 curriculum. It's very unconventional for one elementary school to have two curriculums at the same time. So really we were hoping for this to be the last transition year, and then going into next year, every elementary school will have the same curriculum that the board adopted through the process earlier last spring, I believe. So this is really making the most of the funds that we got from the state. And just to refresh us on what that process looked like, the state, because of Alaska Reads, they vetted a set of curriculum. They boiled it down to 5. The district got that reduced set of 5, and we actually enlisted dozens of teachers and staff members and experts to go through a pretty robust process to rate all of those curriculum across a rubric. And then we presented that information to the board, and we decided to adopt K3. And it was my understanding it was with the expectation we would find the funds to fund the rest of it the next year. So that's really what the vote for tonight is about. The other point I wanted to make is that implementation is a great question, because, curriculum is one thing, but if it's not, highly rigorous, if it's not aligned, then it doesn't necessarily improve student learning. So I actually want to thank the board specifically, because I came to the board and I said that I'm a little concerned. It's a big lift to adopt a curriculum on a compressed timeline. And I was thankful that the board supported 1 extra days for teachers. We voted on that in the special meeting this summer to allow teachers extra time to adapt to this new curriculum. Those teachers could conceivably use those days, those experiences, to have a successful implementation of grades 4-5 if they are in another grade level next year. And then this was one of the prime reasons why I advocated strongly for professional learning communities Mondays, because it gives an hour every week for teachers to come together and share instructional best practices and work with their colleagues on instruction specifically aligned to the board goals. So I think we're all on the same page that implementation needs to look differently than it's been in the past. And now we have dozens of extra hours that can be invested in making sure that we implement this curriculum well so that we can move student achievement.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant. Are there member lessons?
Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the response. I wanted to maybe add a little bit more, although I'm not the expert in the room. I think one of the things about, to your point, Member Donnelly, about the importance of phonics, it's my understanding that that's really core to the K3 work, right? We talk about learning to read, and then you pivot to the reading to learn. And one of the reasons, quite frankly, that I, a year ago, would have preferred to have just gone whole hog and done the whole K5 purchase is that I'm particularly concerned about this year's 4th graders that data show are going to be needing continued extra doses of tutoring, support, intervention. And in a way, I still sort of wish we had been able, if we had the capacity, the staffing, the resources, to have moved forward with the entire CKLA implementation this year. But we were told that wasn't really humanly possible. And so stretching out is what we had to do. But I do think that as we go forward, really what's going to be more important is that tier 2 and tier 3 materials for these students who are at risk are going to be not only provided, but staffed. And so I think that really, as we think about future budgeting scenarios, making sure that we have the personnel to divide our most at-risk students into the appropriate sized small groups to be able to take advantage of those tier 2 and tier 3 resources is going to be critical. So I think, it will help create a seamless elementary school experience to have the K5 materials be in alignment. But I think more importantly, for the reading growth that I think we all want to see, is that we need the resources to be able to fully implement it. We heard that there is an implementation plan, but a plan is only as good as the ability for the people power behind the plan. And that's where I'm worried that we're going to be struggling. So that's a long way to circle back to, I will support this memo, but we need to keep our eyes on a lot of different things as we move forward.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Let's go around. Member Jacobs, question, comment?
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to put a pin on one item that I think Dr. Brown wasn't able to address or didn't address, and that was, I guess I was looking to confirm my recollection and understanding that Spalding wasn't on the list of Alaska Deed approved curriculum that ASD could have chosen from when we adopted K3.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Member Donnelly, any final comments before we vote?
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity. I really appreciate this discussion.
Okay.
I think it's very positive and helpful for the community to understand what we're doing here.
Yeah, thank you. All right. We ready to vote? So can we, I think we did that already, didn't we? Oh, we didn't read the motion? Okay, so let's read the motion into the record and the second.
Madam President, I move to approve ASD Memorandum number 019, approval to adopt English Language Arts curriculum, grades number 4 through 5, to approve the adoption of ELA, CKLA for grades 4 to 5 to be implemented in the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Moved in second. Let's vote. Voice vote, please.
Member Holloman,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Member Lessons,
Yes.
Member Wilson,
Yes.
Member Donnelly,
Yes.
Member Higgins,
Yes.
Student Representative Pack,
Yes.
and President Bellamy.
Yes. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. 7-0. And we're moving on our agenda to item G. That's a non-action item for tonight. Approval of the 23-24 organizational chart. We will vote on that next time we're together. If you have questions, please send them into the staff well in advance of the meeting, please. We have no further public comment. I'll give one more look to Mr. Velasco. I do not see him. So that brings us to our superintendent update.
Thank you, Madam President. So we haven't met since the start of school. So we've officially launched for 23-24. And, having been in quite a few schools since the start, we really do have some positive momentum going, generally speaking. So, in the schools and the classrooms that I've visited, I'm feeling positivity, I'm sensing optimism, and overall, I'm seeing a focus on the board goals and student learning. So just a few things I want to highlight, some reflections from the past few weeks. So, number one is PLCs. I've been participating in all of the PLC Mondays. And as you all know, we deployed Ed Center staff to assist with child supervision for principals and to collect data every week as to where are the hot spots, and it's paid off. So we already know where we're seeing a lot of need, and we're seeing areas where we're not seeing as much need. So we're diverting resources to the right schools. And thankfully, I've been able to actually sit in the PLCs and just make sure and model that these are very important to pull off with fidelity. They're not a meeting. They're a time for teachers to collaborate on student outcomes and goals. So right now, teachers are learning what is a PLC to set a strong foundation so they can take ownership of that time and to use it to make the most of student outcomes. The other thing that I've been looking at is CCL. So, I want to highlight what was shared earlier this afternoon, which is that our CCL team has conducted over 30 stakeholder meetings in August alone. Everything with different stakeholders such as the business community, JBER, trade associations, other leaders. So we are on track to have an exciting launch to our October 12th community convening. And of course, all board members are invited, and we'll send you the details if we haven't already. And really the focus for me, now that we haven't had as many operational crises this time around for beginning of school, is really just being in the schools doing walkthroughs myself. So you might be wondering, what is the superintendent looking at when he's in a building? And it's quite a few things that I've outlined in Board Connect, but everything from visitor protocols to how the CKLA rollout's going, to observing class sizes and bubbles and infrastructure that we need to look at for future bonds, staffing, and then I try to observe climate, talk to teachers, understand how they're feeling, and talk with principals to brainstorm ways that we can be better supports to the buildings. But overall, what I'm sensing is that the message is cascading down, that what matters are reading and math and life readiness. So that's exciting for me, and I really need to encourage and model that momentum so that the entire organization knows that that's the priority. I want to highlight transportation. That was something I was curious about for the first day of school. And we started the year with full student transportation service. So that's a big milestone that the team is proud of after what happened last year. So our commitment to paying drivers competitive wages, reimagining recruitment, keeping drivers employed during the summer did pay off. And we're thankful to the transportation professionals in our district. Many of them joined ASD in the middle of our crisis. They heard our call to action, they joined our ranks, and they chose to stay in Team ASD. So just a huge thank you to our transportation staff who are making sure that kids can focus on learning and our families and community is not stressed about the transportation. And I want to say, in that same vein, across all of our groups, we've been tackling changes to really make a dent into these vacancies in the high need areas in particular. There is a lot of work to be done, but we've been having conversations with the board and internally about ways that we can recruit and retain talent in all of our areas, because we want to make sure that our schools are fully staffed. But that does bring me to my last topic that I want to talk about, which is the kind of the road and next steps to the conversations around consolidating and right-sizing our footprint. It was covered in the media. I did share it in our, board connect a couple of times, but I really do want the community and public to understand that as ASD offers more competitive wages to combat inflation and to decrease vacancies, that does mean that the cost of business is rising in ASD while the funding remains flat. So in other words, in the absence of larger recurring investments in education, in the absence of a major surge of new families into Alaska, we do need to seriously consider substantially shrinking our operational footprint to ensure that all students have access to properly resourced schools. Right sizing is not about the budget. It's about designing our schools to where they're adequately staffed, to where we have balanced class sizes, and to where we have robust course offerings that are more difficult to offer at the scale of the number of buildings that we have, with the number of students and funding from the state that we're currently getting. So what I want to share tonight is just that those internal conversations are happening about how to best discuss the topic with the community, how to best gather their feedback. I do recommend that we approach the school consolidation conversation differently than we did last year. For example, instead of discussing specific schools, I actually think that we need a year just to talk with the community, get their input on the conversation in general, so we can understand what the concerns are, what are the attitudes and perceptions around right sizing. So if the board is asked to do it, they have much more data and robust information than we had last time on such a short runway. So that means that we're going to start that community engagement process throughout the year in different ways, more details later, but I'm trying to get the board on track to make a decision sometime before the FY25 budget cycle is finalized. So we do have a roadmap, but I think that community engagement is going to be critical to getting the support and understanding for why we're doing it. And again, I think the other key difference is that the conversation is going to be less around budget, because I really do want to chip at vacancies. I want to chip at the number of combination classrooms. I want to chip at the fact that it's really difficult to have fully resourced schools when we're spread so thin with flat funding, when we're trying to competitively pay professionals so that they choose ASD and stay in ASD. It's complicated, but it's been done in other places, and it's something that the community can consider talking about here. And then, the board has a very difficult decision to deliberate once we gather that information. So I'll have more to share in the coming months with the board. I think I envision having a more formal timeline presented to the board in the coming weeks, just to preview it, get your feedback. But I do think it's very important, just given some of the things that I'm seeing in our schools as a result of our enrollment and funding situation. So those are the major topics I wanted to highlight. We'll continue to prioritize the big 6 initiatives that are aligned to the board goals, including CCL. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant. Questions for Dr. Bryant? Oh, y'all don't have no questions. I'm surprised. I have one. Actually, can you, with the PLCs, now I've heard nothing but good news about the PLCs, and these are from educators. So it's something they obviously value. And you said, so what is this? Can you just give us the structure of it? I know that they come in an hour early. They're together either in groups or pods or teams, and they are working. And then tell us what happens to those kids that come early outside of that. You've given us an update, but I don't know that the public has heard the update.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. And that's why I wanted to be out there in the schools, kind of seeing how this plays out. So just to recap, the board and community, we made a promise to families that if they need to drop off their students at the same time 5 days a week, they'll have that option to do so. And they don't need to necessarily pay for an extra care program like, Campfire to do that. So what that means is right now we deployed all of our Ed Center staff to various elementary schools, because those were the schools most vulnerable to being impacted by the childcare situation. Some schools were very minimally impacted. Other schools, they did have quite a few drop-offs. So right after every PLC Monday, we meet as a senior team and we look school by school, where are the hot pockets? And then we start adding resources to those schools. And then we closely partner with the principals to figure out, okay, what is it going to take to be able to pull off childcare in for that 1 hour for the rest of the year, whether it's our team or whether it's more resources or reaching out to the community. So it's just really varied. But the childcare piece is one piece, because, and just so the public understands what's going on, is that PLCs are designed for instructional staff to be together. They're not supervising students. They're not in a staff meeting. They're talking about student outcomes and achievement. So I could talk about PLCs all night long, because I actually used to be a PLC leader myself when I was an educator, and I led math professional learning for my district when I was a teacher. And I actually implemented PLCs for advanced placement courses, and we saw huge gains in outcomes. So it's just an area where I have a lot of content expertise and passion. But the point of it is that what makes a PLC special is that it's teacher driven. So it's not administrators telling teachers what they need to know. It's teachers reflecting with their colleagues about what are best practices in education that they need to know, looking at data, sharing best practices. Because think about it, some teachers have served students in different parts of a student's careers within one elementary school. So one teacher might have great strategies for working with certain groups of students that a new teacher might not. So there are just so many baked in benefits to a professional learning community. The biggest cost is the investment of time and fidelity. So that's why this first month, the PLCs have kind of been PLCs about how to do a PLC, because if you don't know what it is, you might interpret it as a department meeting, you might interpret it as a staff meeting, and that's not what it's about. And that's also part of the reason why I personally go to a different PLC every week, because I want to model that it's my expectation that it's not that. And anytime somebody comes to me and says, oh, can I talk about this administrative thing in a PLC, I'm going to say no. And I want to go on the record that I'm going to say no because we need to set a good expectation at the top that a PLC is about instruction. And if we're going to invest an hour every week, it needs to be aligned to what helps students achieve, which are supported teachers in all of our classrooms. So I think this was a big gift to teachers that I think was long overdue. It's not new to ASD. We've done this in the high schools, but now we're doing it system-wide. And the Ed Center's here to support schools to where they don't need to worry about the supervision if they're having issues. So we're going to keep on going out to schools at least for the next couple weeks, if not longer.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other questions? Comments on the superintendent's report? Seeing, hearing none, we will move on. Item J, comments, school board and administration comments, J1. Who wants to go first? Oh, Member Wilson. Thank you. Nobody else jumped tonight.
So I had the privilege of going to visit Denali Montessori School recently, walking into the school. So my kids attended Denali. My 3 kids attended Denali. And so I got to visit their old stomping ground. And that was really nice. Walking in, the security vestibule was beautiful. That did not exist when my kids attended. So that's always a lot of fun, is going to the schools. And I look forward to attending Russian Jack Elementary's open house on Thursday. And I just wanted to share the appreciation. I received a few invitations from principals and teachers to attend, not to attend, but to visit their schools as well. So I really appreciate those invitations. And I look forward to continuing to visit schools. And now that we're back in school, we're gearing up for new communications on attendance and reading. And speaking of back to school, our Weather Lab series returns tomorrow night with our partners at KTUU and KYES. This is our weekly series with meteorologist Melissa Fry as she reimagines our classrooms for a cool science lesson all about weather. And also a reminder that Thursday is our next communications committee meeting at 1 p.m. So please join us online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Wilson. Let's just keep going around. Member Lessons.
Sure. I want to thank again the administration for that update on why we're still waiting for data on AK Star from the state. They're trying to understand what they mean by proficiency, which sort of brings us back to the work session and, at some level, what students are doing here with their GPA. Maybe that's our proof in the pudding. But so we'll sit tight and wait. And thank you also for the ELA update and the really strong presentation on the CCL work. I continue to appreciate the focus on attendance that I'm seeing as part of this work and hearing that it's a priority at each of our high schools. There is much ground to be gained from where we have been. I just took a peek at our data for the month of August. And the good news is that it looks better for a start to the year than it has in the past 2 years. That said, I'm going to call out our 12th graders, who are already lagging behind their younger counterparts. There's like 1,000 12th graders with less than 90% attendance in August. So, clearly this is already maybe a worrying sign. But I will trust that the administration is on it. And again, I know that our principals are focused in. I was at one of our high schools last week, and the principal relayed that indeed attendance is that focus. And we really got into the discussion that it comes down to individual students, right? Every student has a story, and how can we troubleshoot each one of those stories? And it's an opportunity, it's a problem and an opportunity to build relationships and change patterns and behaviors. We have a finance committee meeting on Thursday at noon. We will be focusing on capital projects and construction and have some funding related discussions. And I wanted to circle back to that high school visit. You spoke about what you do at a walkthrough, and somebody said, what do school board members do in a walkthrough? And it's not really a walkthrough, but personally, I enjoy the chance to have a candid conversation with, the school leader, poke my heads into classrooms, see amazing teaching. I still come back to a math lesson a year or two ago, -9 - 6, right? And it was just like 15 minutes of really engaging classroom discussion about the concept of -9 - 6. And it was just, quite frankly, thrilling to watch great teaching in action. But to the point of what else, I would look for on a visit, I would say it's a multisensory experience, right? Thinking about leaky roofs. And in this case, I was thinking about vaping. So I walked into a girl's bathroom and was greeted with the overwhelming smell of vaping materials, right? And this is a problem, not just in this one school, not just in ASD, but nationally. And so, this is a great example of community problems coming into our schools. And the school staff is working on it, but they don't have the resources to put somebody in every bathroom all the time. And because students know that cameras are everywhere in the hallways and bathrooms are a safe space, that's where they're going to go before school, during classes, or, during passing times. And if you're an asthmatic student and have respiratory problems, you're going to feel the secondhand effects of that. So anyways, there's a lot that I learned from any one visit to a school. I really value them. I'm looking forward to more visits. But yeah, the vaping is a huge problem. And it, considering that nicotine has damaging effects on memory and learning and attention, frankly, that's a problem for our student outcomes. Not to speak of, public health later on down the road. So that's kind of a rabbit hole or a digression, but I just wanted to chime in on what else you can learn from visiting a school. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Holloman.
Yes, and just some general reading around the country, there does seem to be a lot of concern that some students have fallen behind more than others, which is not terribly insightful. That happens all the time, but not strictly in terms of content, but in terms of ability to do the things that students do when they're in school that lead to learning. And it's a secondary effect of the time we were closed during COVID and whatnot. And I am wondering if the district has plans to address this directly in this coming year, to simply look for students that may have been doing okay before, but are doing less than okay at this point. And as always, I know that there's a huge obstacle in terms of trying to work with specific students that are behind, because you don't want to take them out of what's happening currently. And there's no other time in the day, unfortunately. So this is a question that's asked, understanding there's not a simple answer to it. And that, but it would be good to know if a district or principals are trying to figure out how to make this happen, how perhaps to get extra time with students that aren't doing particularly well. And also, I guess, just to recognize that teachers are having to deal with this, that there's a broader range of performance in front of them than there was before the pandemic, even that the gap between your best student and your student who's struggling may be bigger than it's ever been before. The other thing I do want to bring up, I've had a couple of Ignite teachers contact me saying that they are being caught up in the testing for the elementary grades. And I'm hoping there just wasn't any other way to get those results scored. I know it's a big task. It's thousands of responses. You do need a focused team that's trained so there's consistency from one grader to another. But for kids whose parents see Ignite as a critical program that elevates their child's interest in being in school, it's unfortunate that they're being pulled for several weeks and that those classes lapse, especially at the beginning of the school year when all of that stuff is so much more important. And I realize it's probably too late to do anything different this year, but I would hope in future years, this board in the past has discussed and asserted that it does want the Ignite program to continue as it has been in the past, assuming we can overcome the financial issues that sparked the first conversation about it, and I'm sure will spark more in the future years. But other than that, it seems like a good kickoff to the year. It does feel a little more normal than anything we've experienced for a few years. And the last request is just kind of some detailed analysis on attendance, maybe at the next couple of board meetings. I know today's still too early to really say, but just in terms of the percentage of students we're seeing back and how frequently those students are showing up, at least in the early parts of it. The comments in the work session about attendance being key seems more important than ever, given that we have more students who are not attending as regularly as they used to. Say thanks to all parents and staff that helped make this year roll off to a reasonable start, and I hope it gets better.
Thank you. Now on the enrollment, did you want more than what was in Board Connect or similar to what's in Board Connect?
Could be similar, but if there's any insights to be offered, and again, I know digging into the why of things is terribly expensive, and not a trivial task. I don't know in the past how much we have tried to find out why students aren't showing up. I know that some teachers and nurses can answer for individual students that they know. I don't know if we have the wherewithal to do any kind of a survey to try to get an idea of what would be causing our students, what the most common reasons are that cause our students to miss. But in a time where absences are escalating, it seems like trying to find a way to ask that question and get some results. And it may be that it's outside the range of the district to do anything about it, but we don't know unless we know what the reasons are.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's go to Joshua.
So I would like to talk about PLC Mondays or PLC days in general. Our teacher was just talking about that today and how she has used it along with other teachers in our school to implement equitable educational policies and grading policies and as such. And I would like to speak on behalf on how I've seen it directly impact and improve our classroom. I can't speak on behalf of every classroom, but I've seen it improve our classroom. And I just want to thank Dr. Bryan for that. And another thing I would like to add is that I'm grateful that Member Lessons is continuing to be our student advisory board school member liaison, as well as Member Wilson for joining her this year, where they can improve communication with the school board and our student advisory board, and I guess increasing clarity and communication between them. And I would like to open that opportunity for all school board members, because we were more than willing to hear you guys talk on what's going on in these meetings, as well as hearing from me. But I think it's very important for them to hear from you guys directly. And so I think you can contact me or some of our advisory teachers who are in charge of SAB if you are wanting to come in and step in during those meetings. And again, we are very open to have you guys in our meetings. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. And I will rise to the occasion on the invitation. I will do that. Thank you very much. Member Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam President. Last week on 60 Minutes, there was a fascinating report about new high-tech security options for classrooms around America and some districts that have implemented it. And of course, our district, I'm very grateful, our district has really improved our security with digital upgrades. But I'm curious of what these new developments and new opportunities, how they might integrate with our digital upgrades that we've been implementing. So if there's any opportunity to give us some sort of briefing on those new developments in classroom security, I'd be very grateful for it. A lot of times you just take things for granted if they're working well, and this board and the administration have worked very hard over the last year to provide, school bus drivers and to prevent what happened last year. And I'm just very, very grateful to the administration for their ongoing intense efforts to avoid having a shortage of drivers again this year. And I just want to congratulate you on successfully achieving that goal. It's so important for so many families. So thank you very much for your team's efforts on that.
Thank you very much, Member Donnelly. Member Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam President. Did want to thank our parents, our educators, our support staff and district administration for getting us off to a good start this year. I will agree that it seems to be as normal as a year that we've had, at least in the last few. So we're getting back to that new normal. I did want to acknowledge that we have a joint meeting with the Anchorage Assembly on the 15th of this month. My understanding is we'll be here in this boardroom at 10 a.m. And lastly, I want to thank the members of this board for continuing to focus on supporting our families, our students, and our educators in this important work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. You can have as much time as you want, Member Higgins.
3 hours,
all right, I take
40
it back.
minutes,
I take it back.
People. Hope everybody took a restroom break. On the serious side, let me say, first of all, that the work session today I really enjoyed. It wasn't focused just on numbers of what we're doing and achieving goals. It really talked about some of the things that are being done in contacting kids, working them into career paths, how we're trying to do that. And for those who had a chance to see that, I think it was very informative. And it's kind of the presentations that I really enjoy. And it really meant a lot more to me than some of the earlier presentations. So I want to start off by saying thank you for that. And I hope that that same approach continues. I know the superintendent made reference to the issue of closing schools, and it's not just finances. There's a lot of other issues out there, and we need to be honest about it. If we can get better outcomes, if we can do other things, it's got to be student focus always. I applaud that. We'll have to have an honest discussion, but and look forward to hearing both the pros and cons, because there's both sides to this issue. We want parents more engaged in the schools. You make them so more remote, you're going to have a reduction there. But by the same token, you're going to have more activities with the kids. And then I went to one school already within my group, and you had so many second, third grades together, third and fourth grades together. And when you do that, you impact academic outcomes. I understand that. So I think it's going to be a good discussion to have the pros and cons on all of that. And I appreciate that. Have been visiting a couple of schools in my area, and I'll get to the rest of them. So I'm giving them all a warning right now. But I enjoy getting a chance to do that. Just for the board's sake, I got to tell you, previously, I haven't done this at this point, but I've done it so much in the past. When I was visiting things like food service and find out the role that food service plays in case of an emergency and the, earthquake and all the other issues beyond for the community as a whole, things that were being leading in other areas, that activities, it really is good to kind of visit those. If you get a chance to visit all the different departments, I've done that in the past. I'm going to start revisiting them again, just because I enjoy hearing what they have to say and what they're doing. And I think that's important. And I guess the last point is, and I'll mention also, I did visit Abbott Loop. It was nice to see the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School in there. They're enjoying it. It puts them in a safe school. It gives them a better atmosphere to be able to be successful. And if we're closing something and we have a chance with the charter schools, it's just something that's a trade-off. That's a very positive. It doesn't matter whether they're charter schools, regular schools, optional programs. They're all ASD kids, and we're responsible for the safety of everyone. And these schools are built for earthquake protection to survive it, compared to many of these charter schools that are in places that just are not safe, period. And the last, I'll just make reference about future school board meetings. It's not quite, it's a little bit to 7:20 right now. We have so many things going on in the Anchorage School District that are educational to the board opportunities. I remember when I ran for the school board 2 years ago, had 2 school board members were asked about SEL, social emotional learning, and their response was that's only something involving counselors, nobody else is involved. Well, having been on the board when they won a national award in it, and I've got a different perspective of that, but I realized how much exposure the board could get in these meetings for different things that different groups out there in the Anchorage School District are accomplishing, some of the things that take pride in, and get some recognition for it. If we can include, when we know we got a short board type issue, to have a chance for them to come in, share what they're doing differently, talk about some of the accomplishments. We can talk about the challenges too. But in every department, we got different things going on, whether it's special ed, whether it's training and development issues, whether it's, food service was at one point, that was close to collapsing last time I was on school board before, and with pumps and light with mechanical issues, and they took months to rebuild a new pump if it had collapsed, and then we upgraded it. But getting that kind of information was really informative to the board, and it gave a chance to give some recognition to staff that are doing a lot of good things. They take pride in it, and they should get some recognition. That's how I feel. And so I would love to see something that we can do more informative to the board, more educational, but also more recognition associated with it. I think it would be a plus. And I'll reserve my other 3 hours for the next school board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do hear your comments regarding how we use the time for business. Right now, our current processes that we use work sessions to learn and enlighten. We use our executive sessions for those things that are not public, and we use this meeting to do the business of the board. What is missing right now is 50, 60, 100 people wanting to testify. We can't control that right now, but I can bet you, I can guarantee you that will be coming. The other thing is missing is at least 45 minutes to an hour in looking at our monitoring reports. We don't have, and we have not yet implemented our community engagement calendar, which will be before the communications committee, so that you will see those groups that are scheduled to come before us. And the only other thing I'll say is, I agree with you that the board, anytime the board gets to have an audience, or be an audience to hear what our people, our constituents are saying, it's great. At the same time, though, we plan each agenda. Tomorrow at noon, we will be planning the next agenda. That's just the way, that's how it rolls. So staff has adequate time so that we can make adjustments if we have to. So I just want you to know, I hear you, but it's not a matter of being able to, we have more time now, usually in the beginning of the year, than we have at other times of the year. But I do hear you. And I think our community engagement calendar will help with that. The other thing is that I think Member Jacobs mentioned that we do have an joint assembly meeting. The agenda, Dr. Bryan and I did do a real quick coordination with the assembly, and Amanda will follow up on those items tomorrow and the next few days, so that we will have that agenda pretty 72 hours before. And of course, we will, board members who are not able to be present, you will have access by electronically. And then I don't know, people don't always understand that the board is assigned, each board member is assigned a designated group of schools. Now, you're not limited to those schools, right? Because we get invited to all schools, and quite often. But for those schools that you are assigned, please make sure, however you do it, you check in with the principal, see what's on the calendar, plug it into your calendar, be there to support, and be available to other schools as well. It's a list, because each of you have about 12 to 15 schools. And then you will add to that 6 or 7 community councils. And they are all kicking off this month. Some of you are missing one tonight. Or maybe you missed one. Yeah, you're missing one tonight. I can't remember which one it is, but it wasn't one of mine. So if you, as Amanda get those dates, confirmed, she will put them on your calendar, but, you can always go to the community council website and if a meeting is going to happen this week or next week, it'll be on there. They may not have changed their calendar. So it's kind of odd. I personally check in with the president of each council to just let them know, so I know when they're going to meet. And if there is a conflict, I can let them know well in advance or participate virtually, whichever one is available. So with that, I also enjoyed the CCL presentation. It's just transformative work. I absolutely enjoyed the data presentation. It just makes sense. It makes sense on such a level that it really provides more clarity than anything I've heard in a long time. I've struggled with how taking algebra dictates who's going to be successful in college. I mean, I know that there's some research, but today's presentation makes much more sense to me. So I thank the staff for that. I thank Dr. Bryant for his leadership, for his tireless. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, you're a tough dude. Okay, you're a tough dude. I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give it to you. So I do appreciate all the work of the staff, just getting us up and going with the new school year. And it is feeling like a different normal, but it's a great normal. And I just want to thank everybody, board members who continue to show up, continue to be there for kids. You know, I mean, you guys are a jewel in my crown. So I thank you. And with that, Dr. Bryant, you have anything else you want to?
No further comment. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. All right. We got time for anybody else over there? I think somebody had their hand up earlier that I didn't see. Now is your time. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Madam President.
Is there a second? Moved. Thank you, Pat. Moved and second to adjourn. Seeing, hearing no objections, we are adjourned. The time is 7:30. All right. Good job. Good job.
Recording